This is going to be a series of videos that getting old. Let's get it out there while we still can. That's going to try to help explain how to play Melobar or lap steel type Melobar, and pretty much focus on standard guitar players. Uh, I was basically born into the Melobar world. It was born the same time I was, and so I didn't know anything else. And 60 years of being around lap steel players, and 15, 16 years old, I'm standing with David Lindley, who at the time Guitar Player magazine had called the greatest lap steel player in the world. So I mean, and I had the unique thing of having hours of videos actually of David playing that I watched and watched and watched, and even talking to him about stuff. What really is different about Melobar is it's in no man's land. It's not a standard guitar, and it's really not a steel guitar. And a lot of steel players don't give us a lot of love because they quit standard guitars. I mean, I even had a guy the other day say, "Oh, you make them armpit guitars. You don't make steel guitars." I've had to deal with that all my life, guy. So, like I say, I'm not slamming anybody, but I'm just saying that, wasn't a lot of love from that side except for the real innovative guys. Jeff Peterson and Clint Black, Troy Clance of Brooks and Dunn. If you watch the Boot Scootin' Boogie video, he's playing a black V. We always want him to play white, but he plays a black V in the dark. But if you look hard, you'll see it's a Melobar. And those guys, there was kind of a unique time period in the 80s where there's some very unique stuff going on. And people always ask me, well, we can go clear back to the 60s, right? I mean, Brian Jones is probably one of the first professionals to put Melobar on a track. Rusty Young with Poco. Notice that these are guys that don't sit in a box. They get out of the box and they try to become something different and better. I had an awful lot of professionals that, Journey calling us saying, "Hey, Neil wanting a Melobar, sitting down with him and showing him, Melobar. Problem is, Dad would only build 10-string things that these guys couldn't adapt to. And so, when I took over, the first thing I did is said, we're going to build 6 strings. The guys can understand that it's just an E open bar chord. They'll get that. I mean, we all can get that. So I know where I am on the fretboard. But the other problem always has been that, you'd get a good slide player and he'd come in and he's used to that light touch because he doesn't want to hit the string, the frets. And he gets this, I can't really do it. They get a real buzzy sound. And you're just like, oh man, that's worse than a cat with a bunch of, long-tailed cat with a bunch of rocking chairs. So they were good guitar players. They sounded terrible when they first started and they quit. And I get it, but there's something really unique about steel guitar lap steel that we all still want because we can bend the note all over the world, and you just can't do that on a standard guitar. So I love playing standard guitar, and I still want to pick up a Melobar, or a lap steel and get, some of that different sound. The other problem, of course, in the lap steel world is that it kind of got a click of, either you were real steel country or you were in the world of Hawaiian steel guitar. And they kind of took over the forums and everything and just chased off anybody that was trying to be innovative and even wanted to introduce it into what we called crock at the time, country rock or rock. I mean, they just abuse them. It's terrible. Had a guy say, "Oh, you make them armpit guitars," and I'm like, seriously? Prejudice coming into the music world is so gross to me because it should be an innovative thing that we all are trying to get new sounds and new stuff. And unfortunately, what happens in music, we hear something and we cling to that. That's why Melobar was usually just only talking to top pros because they were the guys making the sound and they wanted something new. Paul Franklin, who was on so many albums, coming to me at a NAMM show going, "Hey, this is what I want you to do," and he wanted a Telecaster in a lap steel thick, body environment, not just a Telecaster on your lap, which was what he was doing, I think, at the time. And we made the Telerad, that he used a lot. They're looking for new sounds. I mean, there's other things I won't tell you that he wanted me to build that I never figured out. Nylon string lap steels. I never figured that one out. But so anyhow, to get innovative on this means that you're going to probably start off not being the best standard guitar player in the world like you were. I had one fellow, I won't say who, but he's trying to learn the thing, and he literally said, "Ted, here, hold the bar." And he was one of the top players in the world, and he turns around and he goes all over like this, and I think it was just to remind himself, I am good. just because I sound terrible on lap steel right now, I know I'm still a good guitar player, and that's kind of what you're going to have to go through. That's the end of my speech on that. Let's get into it. So the first thing that happens is the bar. The bar is really important. Like I say, I'm not teaching steel guitar here. Steel guitar is going to use a huge round bar, a lot of weight. The guys are going to hold it differently, like a finger on each side, because they're trying to hold a piece of steel with no handle on it. One of the first things Dad did was put a handle on it, right? He put the Sure Grip, which I'm not going to show you because we're not building it anymore, and I don't want you to ask me for one. I do use it quite a bit on videos, and I love it, but I also played it for 40 years, so, right? I believe this bar is superior to the Sure Grip bar. Couple of reasons why. Very famous dobro player blew us all away. We thought he was Jimi Hendrix on the dobro, and then Jeff Peterson sent me a Shearhorn bar that had this very sharp edge, and all you had to do was pull back with the bar, and it would hammer on some pull-offs for you. The bar is a big deal, and I would get a Shearhorn bar, and I would get as many bars as you can. However, this would be the first one because, making that wood, grip on there makes it to where anybody can grab onto that and hang on to it. The funny thing about it is standard guitar players, again, struggle here because they have a lot of times really long fingers, and they'll push it clear past the bar. And there's one of a guy playing a CC8, one of our Melobars, and his fingers are so long, they're clear over the top like this. And so, when you're clear over there, you lose a lot of control, vision. You need to be able to see what you're playing. And his fingers are wrapped clear down almost over the fretboard. And I remember looking at it going, I wish I could talk to that guy and tell him, look, pull your finger back like that. And as your finger comes down like that, you actually get some control like a pencil. And then you're bringing your thumb in on the side and you're gripping. That bar now starts to become part of your hand. I actually shape these to my hand. I take a sander, light small belt sander, and start shaping these when I get them until I like them. Notice I've got a mark even that's the front because I know what shape I like on it. That's number one, how we hold the bar. The bar needs to be gripped well. The other thing is guys like to spread their fingers. You'll see them come down and their fingers are spread wide. That's not going to work either, okay? The muting that you do in your right hand that you're so used to, you still can over the bridge. But your key muting is these fingers right here. They are the key to a good sound. They need to land. I used to always teach, look, rock on the strings and rock off. Rock and roll. Rock on and off. The fingers should land first, not the bar. Okay? We need to... So the fingers come down first, then the bar. Which means that my angle and my drop down onto that fret really is more on the finger side, isn't it, than it is on the bar visually. So I want to play accurately. I have to come down and realize that I'm not at an angle that I can really see correctly. In other words, as I'm dropping down, that's farther away than when I come up here. Now I'm going to do a better video or close-up of that here in a second. So the fingers have to come down first, then the bar comes down, and if I do it that way, see, there's no buzz. And when I leave, I need to pull the bar off first, let the string stop, the finger stop the string buzz, and then pull off. Okay? So I would practice probably at the 5th fret going and get to where I get a good sound with no buzz. Once you've done that, start moving fret to fret to fret. Something I changed. I do not go from one scale to another to another. Since I have playing really sped up, because I had a 22 and 7/8 I was dealing with. A lot of lap steels are 22 and a half scale length there. This is a 24 and a half, and there's a lot of versions now that are 25 going back to Leo Fender's old length. Why do we have different lengths? Well, one of them was the jump, okay? If I'm going to go from here to here or from here to here, if I can eliminate a ½ inch, that's a big deal. So they went shorter and shorter scales. Problem with a short scale, it'll sound good when you're in the living room. As soon as you get out of the living room and you're playing with a band, you're going to be working really hard to stay right on pitch. Remember, I've got some, I mean, a tenth of an inch. Watch a, your chromatic tuner, and you're going to go, oh man, this thing's sensitive. Well, yeah. I mean, it's, changing the pitch. So I go with one scale and stay with it. I don't care which one you do, but I would encourage a longer scale just because it has what we call a wider sweet spot. It has a little tiny bit wider area that still sounds in pitch. The tighter the scale, the more sensitive that becomes. And that's pretty tough when you're playing on stage with a band and it doesn't sound good. That's why most guys don't. You listen, you're like, wow, what's wrong? Find a scale, stay with it. Like I say, I've married 24 and a half, and I have a Weisenborn. I had to put a nut on and put a different fretboard on. I've got a Gretsch honey dipper type, that was a square neck. I literally ripped all the frets out, put another fretboard on it, cut where the nut was because it was a 25 and I wanted a 24 and a half. So that's how tough I've had to be to have everything at that same scale. But man, it's improved my speed because I think your mind starts to memorize distance. I can't do that now on a short scale. I'm off. So it shows that your mind is memorizing distance. So, number one, rock and roll. Get the right bar. Once we're now starting to get that going, I want you to get a chromatic tuner, and I want you to watch it and just do the first string. You'll find it's a lot easier going up. When you start going, you're going to go, you're going to try it and you go, how do you even do that? Because you can't see the fret, okay? When I'm up here, these fingers are covering the next fret I want to go to. Kind of a problem. That's why you need to have one scale length, because you're actually going to have to memorize the distance. You're not going to. Your mind's going to. Your music mind. So, you can see why lap steel starts to become kind of a problem, kind of a difficult thing to learn, is that those are tough things. So, when you listen, most people are playing, say the band's doing an A chord, they're going, they're just working off that fret. Now, again, I don't know how many names I can say, but there was a guy that was a big-time editor of Guitar Player magazine I sent a lap steel to, didn't know how to play lap steel, played standard. I gave him a little coaching on this. And then he calls me back and he says, Ted, I went out to a gig in LA, just, small bar, pulled it out. And he said, I almost did nothing and people cheered. And I'm like, yeah, welcome to the lap steel world. Less is better, number one. And people are it's such a new, different instrument with a different sound that a little bit goes a long ways, okay? I mean, I've literally sat in on jams where I'm just... doing very little. 2 strings. Listen to Derek Trucks. He's usually using 1 string, okay? So 2 strings, and all I'm doing is flavoring what they're doing. flavoring the chord that's there. We have isolated tracks on YouTube now for, like all the Rolling Stones songs now are on isolated tracks where you can listen to Brian Jones and just what did he do in all of them. Fascinating because very little is distorted, and yet this is rock and roll. And they're just adding a little bit continually on that track. And yet, wow, the whole song's different because of that one instrument adding a little bit. That's you now on lap steel. That's all you're really going to be going for. You're not trying to do a speed play. You're not trying to do a lot of... That sounds terrible with the rest of the band. And your hammer-ons aren't near as good as a standard guitar player. Let him do the hammer-ons. What he can't do is... He can't do that. Okay? So add what he can't do to the mix. So that means that when you're practicing this, it's a really good idea to have things on, have things rolling. Again, if you're a Hawaiian lap steel player, turn the video off because this isn't for you. If you're a Hawaiian lap steel player, you're going to go get, books with tablature, and you're going to learn a, Hawaiian Leia, type tune, and you're going to really milk it out, which is great, but that's not what we're teaching here. We're teaching standard guitar players how to use this on stage and add it to their already existing repertoire. So, too much. What are we going to add? Now, you notice I'm shaking all over, right? There's an old joke about a famous steel player coming up to me at a NAMM show, or he didn't come up to me, told somebody else in the national booth behind me that I sounded like my tremolos were nervous, and the guy came over to tell me, see if I get mad, and I said, well, if I don't sell about 20 guitars, I'm going broke in the next 2 days. So yeah, I think probably there's some nervousness in it. But what makes a standard guitar player unique is how much vibrato he's putting into his fingers. Why did B.B. King want to go meet Walt Smith? There's that famous story. Well, when I watched The Life of Riley, which is his documentary, I figured it out. I went, wow. He tried bottleneck and couldn't get it. So he was kind of looking at Melobar going, what is that? And so, he says as a joke in that video that the vibrato, he figured out how to really create vibrato, and that's the B.B. King vibrato. We try to copy now, but it's pretty tough because everyone's unique. Your vibrato is going to be unique. And I'm kind of overdoing it there. If I was in a band situation, that's all it would take. It wouldn't take a lot. And everybody in the band says, oh, you're great. It's the fun part of lap steel. You're like, I didn't do much, but okay, But they're right. It's that little bit at the end of a chorus or something. If you pay attention and listen, something right at the end. So that's what you're looking for. Doesn't take much. So that's all I'm going to do for today. That gives you kind of a taste, a little bit, and something to work on. Use your chromatic tuner. Make sure you're getting on pitch because that's going to be real important. Don't try to do a lot. Give it like B.B. King does. A lot of depth, good solid sound, really good stuff. A lot of guys play right about here on the bar even with the first string. Okay? So you'll see them push, especially David. He'll push out that bar because there's a better sound on the bar and that little bit thicker. My finger's now directly over it, so a little better pressure. So keep that in mind. The second string is where Derek Trucks lives. Okay? Second string, for some reason, it's a little bigger gauge. That helps. But it has a great tone. Okay? So, you don't have to do a lot, but what you do needs to have really good bluesy depth in it. Hope that helps.